Okay, so fairly big update to talk about on the stats software today. Head-to-head stats are finally here. So the first thing you'll probably notice when you load up the software today is that there's been a slight layout change. You've basically got an extra selector here at the top now because we've split the stats tables into two sections, overall and head-to-head and home and away. The reason for that is just to keep the scrolling in this panel to a minimum, really. If you had home, away, overall, head-to-head, all on screen at once, then you're going to be scrolling up and down, and it's going to do your head in, basically. So I hope that makes sense and works okay for everyone. So obviously in this video, we're focusing on this head-to-head table. There are head-to-head stats for most of the stat focus areas that you can select from here. Sometimes they're overall head-to-head stats, like for the score lines, overs and unders, and so on. Anything that doesn't make sense to be split by teams, basically. Other times they are split by teams. So, for example, on the goal times here, you've got a breakdown of the goals scored in each time period, and you can see T1 and T2 at the top here, which stands for Team 1 and Team 2. So you can see how many goals each team scored in those time periods. So wherever you see T1, that's the team that's playing at home in the match that we're looking at, and obviously Team 2 is the away team. The key thing there is that the head-to-head stats are not specific to home and away like the other stats are, by which I mean, normally we look at the last 10 home matches for the home team and the last 10 away matches for the away team. So if I go to the home and away tables here, the stats in the top table are based on Southampton's last 10 home matches, and the bottom table is based on Tottenham's last 10 away matches. It's not like that with the head-to-head stats, for the simple reason that teams only normally play each other a couple of times a season, and obviously the thing we're focusing on with this particular table is just the fact that these two teams specifically are playing each other. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to restrict it to only games where Southampton was playing at home and Tottenham were playing away. So the figures in these head-to-head tables are based on the last 10 head-to-head matches between Southampton and Tottenham, regardless of who was playing at home and who was away. So these Team 1 goals here in this column, they're all goals that were scored by Southampton, but they could have been playing at home or away. The next thing you need to know is that some of the settings at the top here don't apply to the head-to-head stats. The current season toggle, for example, doesn't do anything because, again, teams only really play each other a couple of times a season. So if there's an upcoming match for these teams that we're looking at in the software right now, then it's likely to only be the first or second time they've met that season. So the most you're going to get by restricting it to current season is one match, really, which seems kind of pointless. The other one that doesn't apply is the same opposition toggle. So if you remember from an earlier video, this option lets you see the stats for matches where the teams played the same standard of opposition. Well, head-to-head stats are they're always only going to be based on these two specific teams, so that's kind of irrelevant, really. The scope option here does work, so you can choose between the last 5, 10 or 20 head-to-head matches. But obviously do bear in mind that you could be looking back sort of years with some of these options for head-to-head stats, and many teams won't even have played each other that many times with the way teams move around between leagues, etc., etc. Okay, so onto the filters then. At the top here in the filter section, you've now got two more subjects to choose from: head-to-head teams and head-to-head overall. So you can select one of these subjects, and then basically the filter system from there on works exactly the same way that it always has. You select whether you want totals, percentages, or whatever, and then what stat you're interested in, and you just continue building the filter like you always have. So what's different with these two extra subjects then? If you select head-to-head teams, what you're basically asking for is either team in the head-to-head stats. So if I was to select head-to-head teams, then average, then shots on target per match, and then we'll go greater than 2. The results I get when I finish building the filter, okay, the results I get will be matches where either team in the head-to-head stats had more than 2 shots on target per match. The difference here obviously being that normally for team stats, we'd be selecting home or away. But again, that's kind of irrelevant for the angle that we're coming from in the head-to-head stats. So it just looks for either team. If you select head-to-head overall, you basically get any stats that it doesn't make sense to split by team, like scorelines, for example, because obviously the scoreline isn't team-specific, it's match-specific. But you also get the combined totals for some of the team head-to-head stats. So, for example, if I go to the attack stats for this match, as we just discussed, we get corners, shots, and so on split by team. But if you're more interested in the combined total than how many each team scored, then you'll get that from this head-to-head overall section. So, in other words, the head-to-head overall corners would be Team 1's corners plus Team 2's corners. The only other thing I want to mention on the filters is that these checkboxes for current season and same opposition do nothing in the same way that they do nothing on these view settings at the top here. You can still use them because obviously you might have a filter with several criteria and might need to use these restrictions for the other criteria, but for the head-to-head stats, they'll just be ignored basically. The promoted and relegated one does apply though, because that's more about their general position in the league. And it's not head-to-head specific or, home or away specific or whatever. Okay, so there you go. Quite a bit of info there on the new head-to-head feature. So feel free to give the video another watch. If anything's unclear, then do give us a shout on the forum and we'll be happy to clarify anything.